Do you guys ever notice I wear the same clothes every single time? If you didn't notice, thank you. If you did, shame on you for not speaking up, or thank you, whatever. I'm excited to present to you guys today the functional runner screen. So this is something I wanted to do for a while. I've done it in the past, but just like with anything, you get better at it, you lean it out, you make it more efficient, more effective. But basically, I want to take every runner, and how do we know, are you at a risk to be injured? How do we know? Is there a certain score? Is there a certain test? This has been done in other sports realms. The functional movement screen, the FMS guys have done a great job with the SFMA and the FMS. I'm certified with both. And basically what it is in a nutshell is we have these series of tests. And depends on your score, you get a specific score. Are you at risk of injury? If we do an entire basketball team and we give everybody the test, they get a score, and then we follow them through the season, who's getting injured? And then we look back at their score. Are there any patterns to not only what's their overall score, but these subsets of tests? So I wanted to make one specific to runners. Running, we know the only thing that changes is the speed and distance, but the mechanics are pretty much similar. If you've been following me for a while, you know this. So it's sagittal plane, it's going forward. So I made a list of 10 different scores that we're going to be going to do, where you either get a 2 is the highest score, a 1, or a 0. Depends on your total score. That can either be used for two things. One, a relative risk assessment, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later. Or two, you do this with your client, with your patient, or with yourself, and then you work on that. If you know that you're deficient in single hop for distance, you know that's more power as opposed to strength, as opposed to endurance. Even though running isn't as much about power, it's still good to see for symmetry. So it gives you an idea of kind of like where to focus and where to work on some strength work or mobility work. So I'm going to go through and explain some of these and the scoring. I will have this available to send to you guys if you guys want a copy. As far as injury risk assessment, I think what would be really cool, because I know a lot of you guys out there are running coaches or cross-country coaches. If you've got everybody on your team, you administer this test on them. It's not going to take a long time. It's pretty easy to do. And then you follow them through the season and you see who's getting injured. And if people that are getting injured, is there any patterns? Everyone that got injured can only got a 1 on this test versus a 0 here. And you can really help to try to prevent injuries. We all hate injuries, whether it's personally or with our athletes or with our runners. So this is a great opportunity for us to try to pinpoint that and try to prevent that in the future. So I'm going to go through these one by one, and then while I show you guys the pictures, you'll have reference to what the different kind of zones are as we go. But pretty much in a nutshell, and I have the reason here, you guys can go through some of this of why that I included this. It's really one true just range of motion. I have found that ankle range of motion is hands down the most important range of motion for running, because when your foot hits the ground, everything else follows suit. If you don't have the ankle range of motion that you need, particularly just this dorsiflexion or the ability to get your knee past your toe, you're going to find a way to move forward. Your body's going to do some crazy stuff to try to accomplish that. And even in the military, they did a study where they looked at similar idea, and they looked back at who was getting injured: shin splints, foot pain, plantar fasciitis, and ankle dorsiflexion or lack thereof was the #1 predictor for time away from training. So super important. I've definitely found this in my running. I'll have a whole session one day just about that, or a post about that. So that's your range of motion. Also, you'll notice we have a lot of unilateral or single leg tests. And the reason for that is running is all about being on one leg. There's no point that you're on both. If so, then you're walking. So all of our tests are looking for symmetry. Do you have one side that's dependent versus the other? And while that might not be a huge deal if you're 45%, 55% on some of these powers or dominance on one side versus the other, over the course of a couple miles, 1,800, 2,000 steps per mile, that really adds up, and that can increase your likelihood for injury. So we got your ankle range of motion, single leg bridge. We've got your side plank to get the muscles on the side of the hip, which is really important for long distance running to stabilize your pelvis. And then I have these tests are all, here we got a distance. Here is a rep range for the scores. Here is also a rep range, and then finally the last one is about symmetry, comparing right side versus left. And do you fall within 95 to 100 for that 2, 85 to 94 for a 1, similar pattern. Also included some for plank, holding a plank, and then also running man for agility. How quick is your cadence? How quick is your turnover rate? Because I've noticed the difference of people that have the ability to, they have the strength, they have the range of motion, but they don't have the ability to turn on and off the muscles very fast. So I found that to be a potential risk factor. So that's going to be in our scoring system. Okay, let's get right into it. So first one, so ankle dorsiflexion. With this test, we see how far away from the wall can you get with your foot straight, keeping your heel down, and tap your knee to the wall. If the heel comes up, it's too tight, you have to move in a little bit closer. And we're trying to see how many inches away from the wall can you go, and that's gonna be your score. So we're ideally, normal range is 4 to 5 inches. You don't need that much for running, but definitely you don't wanna be on the lower end of that. So I have the lowest score of a 0 being 1 inch and less. Okay, next one is single leg hip bridge, super important one. I had a post about this before about doing it correctly, not just arching your back, and actually using your glute, not your hamstring. So I'm doing this for 2 reasons. One, active length of your hip flexor. If you're able to get up to neutral, that's about the amount of range of motion that I'm looking for. But also I wanna make sure your hips are not uneven, make sure they're level, and we've got a rep range for that one. You're gonna do that both on the left and on the right side. If you can get more than 10, you get the highest score of a 2. If you get between 5 and 9, that's a 1. Anything less than that, you get a 0. So that's both on the right and on the left side for separate. So this next one is for 2 things. One, some static stability of that bottom side, being glute med, your hip abductors, QL, obliques, and then also the ability of the top leg. Can you hold that balance and perform 10 reps at least for that straight leg raise? Between same scoring for the other one, between 5 and 9, you're gonna get a 1, 10 and greater is a 2. Anything 1 to 4 or even 0, that's gonna get you a 0. So you're gonna repeat that on both sides and you get a score for each side individually. Okay, so this next one is a step down test. This is 6 inches in length, and that's about the amount of degrees that your knee should go through the excursion while running. But basically what we're doing is we're looking for left side versus right side for any asymmetries. Ideally, I want you to not hold on to anything for balance. If you absolutely have to, you can hold on to a foam roller, the banister, because it's not as much about balance for this as it is for symmetry. So I'm okay with either as long as you're consistent with both sides. But pretty much what you're gonna do is you're gonna time how long it takes you to get 20 reps. So when you do that 20 reps, what is your symmetry on the right versus the left? If it takes you 25 seconds to get it on the right, and only takes you 20 seconds to get it on the left, you're gonna do that math, you're about 75% or whatever, just mental math. So they've actually validated this test in the research for people after total knee replacements and some other kind of physical therapy stuff, but this is also super helpful to see, are you dominant with your extensors on one side versus the other? If you are, that is probably gonna manifest in your running to be more on one side versus the other, and we don't want that. This next one is a great one that we use post-operative a lot in our knee patients, but we're looking for power. The ability to create force is a component of time, but here we're using distance. What we're gonna do is you're gonna take a piece of tape and you get 3 attempts for all of these. You're gonna jump as far as you can on your right leg, land, put a piece of tape, and then you're gonna also repeat that again on the left. As far as you can, put a piece of tape, and we're looking for what % symmetry. So there's the left, I mark that spot, go back, repeat on that right. You measure that out, you wanna be between 95 and 100%, 3 attempts, and that's gonna give you your score of a 2 between 95 and 100, and between 85 and 94 is gonna be your 1. The running man, if you've been following me for a bit, you know I love this one. But we're trying to see how many reps can you get, or steps. Every time you do that, 1, 2, 3, 4, how many can you get in 1 minute? It's gonna tax your cardiovascular system. It's gonna see how quick and efficient are you like cadence or step rate at turning that turnover rate. So I'm hoping that your cardiovascular system isn't your rate limiting factor. If it is, it kind of tells us what we need to work on. But also for this one, I've got a range of between 160 and 180. And this is similar to what we look for in cadence, your step rate. We see 165 and below, your risk of injury does go up. And then but to get a 1, it's 140 to 159. And again, I'll have all this stuff sent out. Anything below that 140 is gonna get you a 0. And then finally included just an old school plank test. Straight on, we're looking at doing it correctly. Everything is in a straight line. Glutes are fired, quads are fired. I'm drawing my belly button up and in deeper towards my spine. No rocking of the hips. And I should be able to see that level, no saggy hips in here. If you can hold that for greater than a minute, 61 seconds and above, you get a 2. If you get between 31 and 60 seconds, that gets you a 1. Anything 30 seconds or below, that's gonna get you a 0. You're gonna add all of these up, and whatever your total score is, that's where we're gonna see what injury risk you fall in, and where also do we need to focus. So I have 17 to 20 is a low risk, 14 to 16 is a moderate risk, 10 to 13 high, and then very high is less than 9. So if you've got any questions about these, please submit them below. And if you get a chance to actually do this with yourself or with somebody else, go and post your score. I'm interested to see what you guys get. And again, I'll be posting future content that shows if you have a 1 in this area, here's some things you can do to try to work to improve your score. Thank you.